are the 5 people you hang out with is something that I've heard a lot over like
Yeah.
the past few weeks. And right now I feel like the 5 people I hang out with are kids. But like, what are the drawbacks of having no one to hang out with? Like now that the world is like getting kind of back to normal, but if you're kind of isolating yourself a little bit, wanted to kind of,
It's a good one. Well, you know, if you select along what when people are having that conversation, what they're getting at is you want to be selective with who you surround yourself with. And if you're surrounding yourself with negativistic, pessimistic, um, Debbie Downer human beings who really don't take joy in your life or contribute to it,
mm,
it's going to be hard for you to maintain the mindset that lets you perform at a really high level because you're doing a lot of um, basically keeping yourself afloat in a sea of negativity. You know, you're doing a lot just to keep yourself propped up. And to be fair, most people don't really approach it that way. Whoever's in their immediate vicinity or who they're happening across most often is who's in their lives. They don't really think about it. Or if it's family, they might just say, well, okay, I'm obligated to see this human being, which you may or may not be. Like you can still have the person in your life and be supportive, but you don't necessarily need to give them as much time, energy, and attention if they haven't earned it or they don't require it. You know, you might still be supportive and wish them well, but you might do that in a telephone call as opposed to actually feeling the need to go and visit out of obligation or something like that. I tell you, the people that I keep in my immediate circle, and I have few, even though I'm surrounded by people most of the time, the people that are in the inner circle, yourself included, oh, oh, yourself included, um, they're generally very positive people and they're very inspiring to me. Um, you know, David Morin is certainly one of those humans that have come into my life who, though we don't have a ton of, you know, contact like within the same city and all that stuff as of late. Just knowing he's out there, we have daily contact. We talk to each other all the time.
mhm.
Um, you know, short and brief, but nonetheless, I have a sense that like on this performance path that that I'm on personally, that he is, you know, a traveler on that same road. And even though we don't bump into each other physically on it very often, I feel just someone else understanding and knowing that mindset and being supportive of it,
Yeah.
and even inspirational in his case, like has made a huge difference in my life. Um, Same with Francis. Francis and I have trained every day. It's got to be going on 5 years now, 4 years,
Yeah.
four
Four,
and
I
a half,
think.
5 years. Yeah. I haven't been within thousands of miles with him physically, but I count him as one of my closest humans. And he continually inspires me, including this morning. We worked out at 5 in the morning today. It was one of the best routines of performance that I've had as far as performance goes. It was one of the
Mhm.
best ones. And I remember walking up the stairs to go do it at 5 in the morning, not really being in my right mind and thinking, whoa, this is going to be really unpleasant because I wasn't all about it. I was like, this is going to be something I'm enduring today,
Yeah.
but it wasn't because as soon as you get in his vicinity, he flicks the switch and you're on. You're however he does it, he does it. Whether it's good humor, whether it's knowing what you're capable of and knowing how to uh, fan the flames of that.
Hmm.
So you go from like unconscious to 120% in no time flat, which that quick jump, that huge um, uh, boost
Hmm.
in such a short period of time, it's pretty amazing to go beyond in like just one flick of the switch and you're there. And once there, it kind of burns off everything else. So I walked away from that thinking, wow, what an amazing thing that I get to access on the daily as early as possible. Just being able to align with your high performance neurochemistry and
Hmm.
get a tsunami of performance neurochemistry that you're stimulating through psychological triggers, your endogenous norepinephrine, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins, anandamide, to just be able to basically bathe yourself in that, so bathe your brain in that, and then use that to power the rest of your day. I mean,
Yeah.
they had a video, I'm sure they do, of me through the building, like going in, trudging up the stairs and, got my gear and coming out, I'm like, like skipping down the stairs and all.
Sliding down the rails.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing the difference. And then, yeah, I actually scamper. I'm not afraid to tell you. I actually scamper down the stairs,
Yeah, that's
um,
awesome.
jump into the vehicle, and I'm off to the practice. And seeing people, as early as 6 in the morning at times with like shrug, no problem.
Yeah. While we're talking about high performance, I did have a question about that. Like when you're like at a high performance level, you're working at such a high level, is there ever a time where you stop trying to learn from other people? Or should you always be looking to learn more?
No, learning keeps you in the game. Like you actually develop a desire to feed yourself more information
Mhm.
because as you're applying it, your understanding the whole process deepens and you realize that stuff that you understood at a certain level, you can dive deeper and understand it much more profoundly. And you're testing it in your mental lab all the time. You're constantly reworking like your understanding of things based on, you know, going into higher levels of performance so that you come to understand things a little more solidly in your thinking, even though you might intellectually understand something, for instance,
Mhm.
when it sets down in your mind, so you feel it lock in and you understand it at a level that is this is just how the world is, as opposed to intellectually I understand this is how it is.
Mhm.
It's a different thing, and you can operationalize it and use it. You have a lot more access to it because it just becomes like how you perceive the world. And I think the nice thing about it is the game of improving performance is, as it's been called, an infinite game. It never ends. Like you've got something to do that I think is very intriguing and quite fun all the time with everything that you've got in front of you. It's a very practical approach because you're using the things that are in front of you in the course of your day, like having your kid go to school and, all those things, washing the dishes, doing the laundry, all the things that have to get done anyway, very practically, but your approach to them is different so that you incorporate them into a process where you're constantly moving towards higher levels of achievement. And so your mind kind of gets a hold of this, kind of gets a hold of the idea that you're trying to do this.
Mhm.
And what I've experienced is that it starts to unlock different levels and give you more and more to perform at a higher level. So it'll give you understanding, it'll give you like access to different parts of your mind, the adaptive unconscious, that kind of give you moments of insight or those eureka moments. You have increased pattern recognition and creativity. So it has this very rich source of, I'm carrying a plastic knife here, very rich source of resource and guidance. And it'll even tell you how to get through some of these things that you're throwing up as goals. it'll kind of coach you in a way because it wants to adapt. And the way it's going to adapt is through your progressing towards achievement.
Mhm.
So I guess the way it figures out it's going to reconcile that is to give you more information to do it. So I'm fond of saying that, once you push past the prohibitions of the amygdala telling you don't do any of these things and trying to govern your capacities and keep you safe, because it can't
Mhm.
really tell the difference between um, discomfort and danger. So anything that's just the other side of discomfort, it's like, okay, don't do it. You can't do it. You're too tired. In my case, you're too old, too short, you're too this, you're too that. If you push past that, the mind still, I'm gonna put this knife down. Mind still wants you to, I know, see how quickly I picked it up? It's like, oh, it's right here. The mind still it has a vested interest in you surviving. And since it can't really tell the difference between discomfort and danger, the adaptive unconscious then is up next. And it says, okay, well, you didn't listen to prohibitions. That didn't work. So, okay, we'll just give you everything
Mhm.
we've got. So all the um, blinders, that keep our conscious mind focused on what's in front of us, and that would be easily overwhelmed and distracted if we were taking in all the information. The adaptive unconscious mind, the unconscious mind doesn't have those blinders. It's taking in tons of information that we don't normally have access to unless we're dreaming, in which case, it's kind of hard to bring that back because our minds are sleeping, right? So if you have these understandings or insights in the unconscious mind, you're sleeping. So you can't really bring it to the conscious mind without waking up, and then it's all jarbled and all that. But in flow states, if your mind is awake and you have these insights that you can access through going through this process, creating flow portals and going into flow states, having as it's denoted in flow research communities, talks on flow psychology, richness of experience, or the R in the stir mnemonic, selflessness, timelessness or time distortion, effortless effort, and richness of experience. The richness of experience is being able to access with your conscious mind now, your wake mind, the adaptive unconscious, or the insights stored in there, which are due to increased pattern recognition. Like you understand, like this is similar to that, and you have innovative ideas or eureka moments or creativity, increased creativity. So as you see these patterns, and you have increased pattern recognition, you're able to use the insights to adapt in the moment. And if you're in a action meets awareness state, like flow psychology or flow, um, then you get into high performance mode and you're just in the activity. You become one with the activity.
It kind of brings me back to what we were talking about at the beginning, like the 5 people that you hang out with. Like me and Tiffany work virtually, for the most part. But for the last month, we've been able to actually like be in person and work together. And it's just like you forget, like, like with COVID and, all that stuff, it's like not being in the office like every day and stuff. And most people are getting back into that now. But it's just like being able to work in the same room with each other and just like instead of through a Zoom screen or something, just like to be able to kind of work off of each other and just like, I feel like we can get a whole month's worth of work done in a day when we can
Yeah.
both get in that zone, you know?
You guys get into interpersonal group flow states, which has been obvious to me. So I try to stay out of your way when you guys are doing your thing, because I'm a distraction at best in those types of things. But the whole thing on the day to day is you got 14 to 16 hours plus or minus that is in your control each day. And it's the multiplication of those hours with designed activity or engineered activity over time that gives you the superpower. There's nothing here that is personality driven. It's all biologically driven. So if you're able to stay focused on this, I like to think of it as it's a war path. And the person you're at war with isn't the rest of the world. The rest of the world is doing what they're doing. You're at war with the parts of yourself that simply want to distract you and have you do fuck all.
Mhm.
So once you realize that you've got these 14 to 16 hours to stay on this path and stay focused. And if you can focus, you can flow, you can align yourself with your biology, power yourself up naturally with your endogenous neurochemicals. And then if you've selected the targets for the day prior, right? You've given some thought into, well, what are of all the activities I could be doing, what are the ones that are going to drive me into a performance mode and progress towards my goals? It's progress towards goals that gives the feeling of satisfaction, ultimately happiness. It's not a geolocation, but a direction that you repeat over and over and over. And it's the replication over time that gives you the ability to become whatever version of yourself. The whole thing with Malcolm Gladwell, I always get his name right. Malcolm Gladwell and the tipping point, the 10,000 hours of experience to become a master at something. It wasn't actually 10,000 hours for everything and everyone, but it is a lot. And so the more that you do these things and attain a sense of going beyond the logistics of an activity, but getting into the point where you're actually performing, it allows you to align with your biology on a daily basis to do a practice that allows you access to this performance neurochemistry, feel-good neurochemistry, and focus neurochemistry. It's the same neurochemistry, it just has different functions. And so if you're able to access this and you do it in the beginning of your day and power yourself up through these psychological triggers, which are basically just how you approach the normal activities of everyday living or avoid some of the normal activities of everyday living, like walking around with your phone in your face and bumping into shit, then you're going to have a much greater likelihood of replicating the activities over time that lead to a prime version of yourself. And then it becomes a game of competition, which is kind of a fun competition with yourself, where the previous version of you, the one from the yesterday that went through all this and hopefully won the day, did a good job. And you have self-respect for that version of you. You know, you respect that version of yourself. But that was yesterday, and it's kind of fun to blow past that version and kind of go, oh, I caught you and did better.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, that's cool. But tomorrow's version is coming right around the corner. So it really becomes, can you pass the torch? Can you run up the warpath? Can you do all these things at a very high level and maybe even surprise yourself? And the thrill that comes from that, like going past what you thought was possible on a given day. Give the raspberries to yourself from the day before, even though you acknowledge it was a good job, I did better. And then pass the torch to the next version of yourself the next day who's got to show up, wake up all, discombobulated, climb the stairs and do the whole thing again. So it's almost like you're sending a message in a bottle to that version of yourself who wakes up and is like, what to do here? And you can think of all sorts of not great things to do when it comes from a performance-based standpoint, especially when you first wake up. If you don't have it laid out, like, hey, by the way, do this, do this, do this, kind of like the movie Memento, remember, with Guy Pearce, where he lost his memory every time he went to sleep, and he's trying to solve like a murder or whatever, if I recall, and so he had to put these little sticky notes to remind himself how the whole thing works.
Mm-hmm.
Like that every morning, like when you get up, if you let it go without any good guidance or guideposts, you're very likely to end up in the shallows of probably just going back to sleep. Where I'm going to bring it around now, where the 5 people who are around you the most come in, is they keep you focused on the warpath. They get where you're coming from. They give you support. They understand what you're doing. Most people on any given day have utterly no idea what I'm doing. And it looks odd. It just looks odd. For instance, running up and down any incline that I come across, right? I'm a 53-year-old man. I shouldn't be running up and down anything. So, and there's no explanation for anyone around me. They just see me like get out of my vehicle, grab my pack, and go booking up inclines.
Yeah.
If you're a car on that incline, it looks odd. If I'm coming straight at you, book bag and my head down, my hat down low and all that stuff. Or if you start up that incline and now all of a sudden there's an old man chasing you in your car.
Yeah.
Now the guys at the parking garage are just like, there's that old man doing that crazy stuff again. But at some level, they also feel the energy and they get that. They get the vibe, they get the energy, but they don't know what exactly I'm doing.
Yeah.
But but to them, it clearly works. So they're nice to me, though they don't understand what exactly I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, sort of the tip of the hat that you get when you're walking around in the world like this, with this being your um, organizing principle. Like-minded people are going to come into your life if you're smart enough to do it. You take people who are more knowledgeable than you and more skillful than you. That's what I've done. Surround yourself with them, and it lets you stay focused on the path that you're setting out each day and not getting too far off it. And the idea that someone is out there and they get what you're doing and they want you to reach whatever pinnacle you're shooting for and go past it, it makes all the difference on the day to day. So I think that's the value of having, 5 people or so around you or whatever number, and maybe a good selection process, maybe a little more nuanced than what most people are using.
Mhm. And then to go back to being a better version of yourself, would you say the tips to do that would be to like write a list before bed to kind of like recap the day and then kind of figure out the things that you can do better? Like keep a journal next to your bed or something?
You can. I mean, if you're a member of this practice, you get one of these Dr. D. Oh, they came in. So yeah, so your adaptive unconscious is constantly talking to you. It's giving you little tidbits. It's giving you little instruction, guidance, or gifts or goals, right? It's throwing up goals that might seem audacious at times. Just, hey, do this, right?
Yeah.
It's giving you guidance. It'll explain how to chunk it down so it's manageable or what to do. And then gifts, the gifts it gives you is it'll give you one of, no, it won't give you one of these, but if it did, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
It'll give you the neurochemistry to support the performance if you push past discomfort. But it's always talking to you. It's just we don't much listen to it. We're much more accustomed to listen to the whiny, intonated part of our mind that's negative because we pay attention to negative things to positive things 9 times to 1, because generally dangerous things tend to be negative things. And so we're attuned to listen to that more. If you start to listen to the other parts of the deep brain, though, it'll give you a lot of interesting information. And if you can write it down when you're in your day, you can refer back to it. And it's actually, I find to be much better than journaling. It's a different conversation. It's not like, let me, you know, summarize the narrative of my life. Or chronicle it. It's more, remember this, remember
Mhm.
this is how this works, this is how that works. And if you go and you open that book, if you are jotting down regularly, it'll give you a lot of traction towards improving your performance. So I think it'll tell you the things that you need to do. It'll prime you to do those sooner than you might be ready to. Um, and all because you're just trying to reach another level. And that makes the whole thing an autotelic experience. Whatever you're doing, you get the possibility of giving it meaning unto itself. If you're doing things that have meaning unto themselves, likely you're going to meet your goals and not be distracted because you're more focused on the process that gives you the achievements than actual trying to grasp at those achievements. So it tends to work out better as far as being obsessed with the process of performance versus the actual results of that performance.
Mhm. But so for people though that the idea of like a high performance lifestyle, like it sounds like a good idea, but they just don't know where to start. Where would you kind of give somebody as a place to kind of?
Well, of course, we're always happy to talk to them, but I found that having structured study is the best way. And it
Mhm.
actually gives you a reason to go into deep learning and things like that, as opposed to I just want to learn about the world. That's cool, but it's better, I think, I have goals and I can give myself knowledge to achieve my goals, and it's going to help me on the day to day. To that end, Stephen Kotler has any number of books, starting with The Rise of Superman, The Art of Impossible, Stealing Fire, three of the big ones. There's others. Those are the three that I found most informative. And as I started going through the books, I'd listen to each twice on Audible because I'm slow. And then I would go to the next book and listen to that twice, go to the next book, listen to that twice, and then ping pong between books.
Mhm.
And so I did that enough to get the general framework of flow psychology and high performance and ultimate human performance approach. And we just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I had to listen to those books at least 20 times over, easy. And each time gain a new understanding and a little deeper understanding of it. When you listen to the Audible books, they'll at some point say, well, if this is intriguing to you, you can look into the Flow Research Collective. And there's several collectives of flow research throughout the world, it turns out, which I didn't know. But this one in particular has, with Stephen Kotler and a group of like-minded people, has a very nicely set up series of lectures, as well as supervision and mentorship and things like that. Matter of fact, I'm about to do one of those today. The first series of modules, and you have a cohort group, so you have other people who are doing this type of stuff, who are interested as well. So you got a group of similarly interested people to kind of help you along. And the first series was called From Zero to Dangerous. So it gets you from a mindset that you're just kind of bumbling about to if you go through the series of modules and you actually do the work, you're actually pretty far along lines of personal human performance. So it teaches you how to do it for yourself. And then the Flow Accelerator is the next series of modules, and it basically recaps the entire thing you just learned, but also teaches you how you might teach it to others. It's a very good review of the material, and by that time you're already using it, so it really deepens your understanding of it. And the next thing is something that I just started, which is Forever Dangerous. This next module is basically a year-long commitment, and it's very structured, and you have check-ins all along the way and a lot of support material. And it's all about, so the first module was learning peak performance or ultimate human performance approach. The second was the Flow Accelerator, teaching you how to teach it. And then the third installment, Forever Dangerous, is basically bringing it to scale. So if you want to bring this to, your highest level performance, or groups or companies or whatever, to go beyond. And that's more of a commitment. I think what they've done is along the way, they've added time constraint. So it has to be done in a certain amount of time, which actually is helpful from a performance standpoint. From Zero to Dangerous probably took me 2 years to go through those lectures, which should have been 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Just because you have to get an N equals enough where you get that tipping point where you're like, oh my God, this is really useful and important and helpful. But until then, you're just approaching like everything else, kind of sampling a little bit here, a little bit there, and I see how that works, and you get interested or focused on other things. Once you make it part of your schedule and you machine it in as deep learning and identify that as a important but non-urgent activity that gives you the most traction towards progress. That whole way of thinking only comes from doing those modules and having it put together in that way where you're like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
So in contrast, the flow training accelerator, which was the second series of modules, I did in 2 weeks, where the first one I did in 2 years. And now I'm all about Forever Dangerous, which is a much longer commitment, but it's like, what else are you going to do with your time? What's more important, right?
Yeah.
So it's good. Where I think clients within the practice get the most benefit is through the performance-based therapy and coaching. The meds are the meds, and not to minimize them, but they decrease the intensity of the symptoms. They don't actually cure the symptoms.
Hmm.
Learning how to manage your mind is always helpful. So that's what we spend most of our time doing nowadays, is teaching people techniques to do that. And since we're practitioners, not theorists, right? So we're on the same path. So there's an authenticity to that, because we're, if I recommend this or that, I'm more likely doing it myself, or I'm at least deeply experienced in it. Like some of the modalities I'm obviously not doing, ketamine infusion for one, but I know a lot about it at this point, right? So, and people can avail themselves of it, or the medications or whatever. But things like flow psychology, I'm practicing on a day-to-day, both personally and, in collaboration with the people that I'm coaching and training and doing therapy with. So it's useful, I think.